evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sir Hunt on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. And just hoping everyone had themselves a wonderful 13th of August of the calendar year 2025. It turned out to be a very nice day over here. Lots to get to here today, and a special tribute to one of the iconic figures in the Hispanic field of athletics, which I've got touched to at the end of this show. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day. Of course, with the NFL season, training camp is coming down to an end. You know, now we get to the nitty gritty of the preseason. Of course, we know the second games have more significance because it's likely the perceived dress games in the NFL, and as a result, that's why we're going to have probably teams playing regulars at a longer time than you would think. I'd probably say about a half for the most part, but that's what I expect to happen as week 2 of the preseason goes on. Still more unfortunate injuries. I'll touch on those here in a bit. But when we speak of the NFL, we always speak about the crooked process that always goes through when it comes to arbitration, because we know Commissioner Roger Goodell wants to be the judge, jury, executioner, and appellate committee. But it was the other day that took place in the Nevada Supreme Court that it was announced that that's not going to happen because they ruled in favor of John Gruden in the particular shebang that took place that got him, I don't want to say ran out, but out of Las Vegas with the Raiders after a 3-0 start. And basically, John Gruden wants the truth, and the respective Supreme Court in Nevada ruled in his favor, as if to say, yes, they're going to have the that in their favor. We know the NFL, when it comes to this sort of thing, has its own weird set of rules, and I mean weird. And I say that respectfully simply because the NFL wants to do things on their terms, their way, among many other things. So we had this coming on. The court ruling basically said that what was done to him was basically unconscionable, and they feel it was a 5-2 ruling in Gruden's favor. So now we're going to have to get down to the nitty gritty and the truth. And now it's revealed that the NFL is going to try and appeal this particular ruling. But it's a case of the crooked process revealing its ugly head when it comes to the NFL. Remember a few weeks ago with the situation with the Players Association, they colluded for Lamar Jackson with the fully guaranteed contract in lieu of what Cleveland gave Deshaun Watson a few years back. That turned out to be exposed and ugly. And now we have another case of this now at a different level, as to the feeling is maybe Roger Goodell pressured everyone to have John Gruden fired from the Raiders, which he eventually resigned in 2021. So John Gruden had his day in court, and John Gruden is going to finally hear the truth, see the truth as to what happened to him when it comes down to why the situation happened a few years back. Still a long ways to go with this, but, once again, it's a case of the NFL arbitration process just being a total class of severe joke, which has been the case for the longest time. And again, we're having another conversation about the arbitration and the process of what takes place in the NFL. So that's what we have here, and we'll see where this one goes. It always has to be talked about because when we think of everything that's happened with the NFL over the last several years, with arbitration hearings, player conduct suspensions, among many other things, the rule changes, and of course the collusion that took place a few weeks ago. We know the NFL is filled with hypocrites. We all know this, especially in the business field of it, and they've always called themselves the Shield. But it seemed like the Shield is starting to have some cracks here in recent weeks. First with the collusion, and now this. And now it's starting to become a bit of a problem. And we'll see where this one goes. I know they tried to settle at one point, which was rejected. Don't know which side it was, but I'm sure another attempt to try and save face with a settlement is going to take place. And I think John Gruden was wise not to accept any settlement until he gets the truth, and the truth as to why what happened 3 years ago. I should say 4 years ago. So I do apologize for that. I swear sometimes the way these leagues are run these days, it's more about the business versus the product. And when you have the business aspect of it that interferes with the purpose and the mission of the product, it rears its ugly head. And once it comes out of the rug, you can't sweep it back. It's dirty all over the place. That's what we had here. And it's this story is not going to end anytime soon. Now, speaking of, I aforementioned the Cleveland Browns and quarterbacks. Of course, it was both. They picked up 5 quarterbacks, and of course, they have Shadeur Sanders having an oblique injury, not expected to play this week. They had, of course, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel. They had Knicks along the way. 45-year-old Joe Flacco, and of course, the Deshaun Watson. Another case of why that franchise in Northeastern Ohio continues to be the laughingstock when it comes to quarterback talent, NFL evaluation talent, especially the quarterback position, because once again, we're having a conversation when it comes to this franchise not being able to find the draft and find the right pieces for the quarterbacks. Remember, since they came back in 1999, over 100 quarterbacks have gone through that roster. And here's another case of it here, because they waited till the last rounds to draft Shadeur Sanders after they already drafted Dylan Gabriel, after they already traded for Kenny Pickett, and after they signed a 45-year-old Joe Flacco. Once again, they're the biggest joke in the NFL when it comes to quarterback evaluations. And Andrew Berry continues to be a walking embarrassment. And here we are with this again, because that team in Northeastern Ohio still doesn't get it. I mean, the rest of their roster, they have solid pieces around their roster. Not great, but solid. I'll give them that. But when you can't have stability at the most key position, which is the quarterback position in the game of football in all levels, high school, college, and NFL, if you can't maintain any kind of stability, don't expect any kind of success, because that's what's happening in Cleveland right now. And that's why they went through 100 quarterbacks since they returned to the league in 1999. And they're probably going to ball up to over 200 within the next 6-7 years the way they're going, because they don't know what they're looking for in a quarterback. And now we have this with Shadeur Sanders, sidelined. Kenny Pickett, after being acquired from the Eagles, he had a hamstring tweak. Apparently, it tweaked again. And, of course, now the feeling calls for Dylan Gabriel. Who knows what's going to happen with the Cleveland quarterback position? Actually, if you're Cleveland, you might as well play quarterback less, because I think you might do better being quarterback less than you do having a quarterback on your roster, because that's what the only way you're going to do anything of significance in the AFC North. Because being quarterback less might be a case of addition by subtraction, and that might be the only way you might have any kind of success up there in Ohio, in Northeastern Ohio. That's the only way I can think about it. But time after time after time since 1999, you guys go through quarterbacks more than an alcoholic goes through beer, or a hillbilly goes through beer, or any older individual goes through food. That's how much you go. Cleveland Browns ownership and fans go through quarterbacks. It is one of the most eye-popping things you'll see. And because you don't have that kind of stability at quarterback, that's why you have had what happened to you over the last several years. Actually, let me take that back. You had Baker Mayfield in 2020, and we know what happened with that one. And he was the best thing that you've had since you came back to Cleveland at that position. What happens? You shipped him out the door. And look at what Baker Mayfield's doing down there in Tampa Bay right now. Just absolutely killing it. And right now, he's probably somewhere laughing at the Browns' quarterback situation, because he would tell you, he's probably sitting there smiling on his face saying, I was there. I was the guy. You wanted to get rid of me. Now you're getting your karma. The Browns fans and the Browns organization are getting their karma right now as a result after sending Baker Mayfield out. And right now they can lie in the bed they made when they traded Baker Mayfield in 2022, because that's why that franchise, when it comes to the quarterback position, has been a laughingstock since they came into the league and still continue to be. It's a big picture that nobody sees. It's a big picture that nobody in the NFL, especially in Northeastern Ohio, understands. It's time everyone gets to the program when it comes to the big picture. And speaking of Northeastern Ohio, Myles Garrett. Take the foot off the pedal, my guy. 40 miles over the speed limit. Question I ask, why is anyone going 40 miles over the speed limit in the state of Ohio? Because if you're going 4 miles over the speed limit in the state of Ohio, you're considered a reckless driver. That's how bad driving is in the state of Ohio, because yours truly sees it. Why in the heck are you going 40 miles per hour in the state of Ohio, especially in that part of town where basically, especially I-71, I-77, all those highways up there is known for wild stuff if you put that lead foot to the pedal. Slow down, my guy. I mean, 40. I mean, it's bad. If you go 4 miles over in Ohio, you're basically a lead foot. I mean, that's what Ohio drivers are like. If you go 4 miles over the speed limit, you're classified as a lead foot. This guy's going 40 miles per hour over, and it's not his first rodeo with the collecting citations in northeastern Ohio, apparently. And it's a bit of a problem. But I think it's a serious problem where everyone is calling for him to be suspended. I doubt that gets that far. But I understand the concern. It is a safety issue when it comes to the streets of Ohio because we know how Ohio streets, especially the interstates in the Buckeye State, go. If you go 4 miles per hour over the speed limit, you're classified as a lead foot and you're classified as a reckless driver. Now you have a guy going 40 miles per hour, which is 10 times over what I said. And that's a double trouble. Actually, almost like a triple trouble when you're going 4 miles per hour over the speed limit. Bad enough. You're going 40 miles per hour over. What in the hell are you thinking? Myles Garrett, you're supposed to be the face of the Cleveland Browns franchise. Come on, man. At least show some responsibility for something like that. 40 miles per hour over. No wonder why they say that the streets of northeastern Ohio are never safe. Maybe because you have guys going 40 miles per hour over on Interstate 71 or Interstate, whatever the interstates they have in that part of town. But just when he's on the road, everyone just get out of the way and let the guy do whatever the heck he wants. That's the only solution. You'll at least survive and not have to worry about someone going 40 miles per hour over on I-71 in northeastern Ohio. Actually, we have I-71 here in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is just as bad also. Another topic for another day. Now to Pittsburgh. That was AFC North talk today. Of course, it was Cam Heyward, 35 years old, who's made over 140 plus mil in the Steel City. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. But apparently, he wants to be paid his worth. That's fine. I mean, look at what the defensive front has gotten in this offseason. When you think about his teammate T.J. Watt, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Danielle Hunter, just to name several of them. I mean, he wants to pay his worth. I mean, understood. I mean, what's wrong with it? I mean, we have people in Pittsburgh who find something wrong with it. I mean, the guy. I mean, if you were in that situation and you see guys around you at your position, especially in the NFL, paid what they are, and you're down in the totem pole, and you feel like you've contributed the way Cam Heyward has contributed to the Pittsburgh Steelers, of course you're going to want to be paid your worth. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Okay, let's get that out of the way. It's a no-brainer. I expect something to get done between him and the Steelers. I can't see this thing just rolling out in the off season. I mean, we get it. Remember, they overpaid many players, especially when you consider what they forked out of the contract to get DK Metcalf from Seattle. And, of course, we know what they just forked out to maintain TJ Watt, understandably so. I get it. I mean, it's understood why he thinks that. I mean, do I think he'll get what he thinks he's going to get? Depends on what he thinks he's going to get. I mean, does he have a number? Does he have a set number? That's a question. It's okay to come out here and say you want to pay your worth because everyone wants to be paid their worth in every employment line, whatever you want to call it. I mean, you can be a steel worker, you can be an accountant, you can be a lawyer, you can be a nurse, you can be a basketball player, a football player, you can be a promoter, you can be the president of the United States, you can be, a janitor, you can be a grave digger. You always want to be paid your worth. It's always overworked, underpaid, understood. I don't know why people in Pittsburgh are going crazy over what this guy said. I mean, basically, he doesn't want to be the highest paid at his position because he knows he won't get that because he's 35 years old and basically winding down a very, very good, solid career in Pittsburgh. I mean, why do people have a problem with a guy saying, pay me my worth? I mean, that's what we have here in Cincinnati with Trey Hendricks. He wants the same thing. We don't have a problem with him saying that. But when you guys make the reactions that you have, when someone says, pay me my value, before you overreact, you might as well ask yourselves what the guy is asking for. Because I don't think the guy said he wanted to be the highest paid. I think he just wanted to be paid to compensate what he's contributed to the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, which has been a valid contributor for the last, 12 years. So I expect him and the Steelers to hash this out, get something done, more like a restructure than an extension because he's on the downturn and they drafted his replacement in the 2025 NFL draft. I think the guy's name was Derek Harmon, if I'm correct. But I expect him and the Steelers to work this out behind closed doors because that's how the Steelers organization does things. And that's why they've been a gold standard when it comes to doing business for ever since they've come into the NFL or in all of team sports. And I expect that to be taken care of. And I expect Cam Heyward to be a piece of that Pittsburgh Steelers defense when week 1 begins. Everyone needs to chill out when someone says, pay me my worth, because everyone in every line of work wants to be paid their worth. Not just Cam Heyward over there in Pittsburgh. Everyone who has a job wants to be paid their worth. I mean, what is your worth? That's up for you to decide. Sometimes it can be performance-based. Sometimes you can set $1. Whatever it is, everyone wants to be paid their worth. And if someone says, pay me my worth, you have the option to say yes or no. That's fine. But doesn't mean the guy can't say, pay me my worth. Cam Heyward had a right to say it. He has a right to feel that way. They never say anything about holding out or holding in because that never came out of his mouth. He's a pro's pro, and I expect him to be a part of the Steelers team moving forward. And I expect him and the Steelers to hash this out when the time comes. And more AFC North talk. Actually, this took place today here in Cincinnati, and it has everyone with their feelings hurt and their panties all up in a bunch. This was a practice that took place where I guess somebody let the first-round pick, Shadeur Stewart, get a hit on Joe Burrow. And it caused some kind of ruckus. Well, it caused two kind of ruckuses. Let's start with that. First, it caused a ruckus on the field where everyone was trying to get into a little groupie thing, exchanging phone numbers or exchanging who had the best-looking wife. And, of course, the second part is it talked about is the Bengals fans having their panties all up in a bunch over something silly per usual. Let me shoot this down because I'm going to have the time of my life again. Well, let's start with the first part. What happened was Shadeur Stewart lost his balance. I mean, I saw that the whole thing. It was much ado about nothing. And it's nothing to go freaky yay over because he basically went up against the 32nd ranked offensive line, which is what the Bengals were last season, and beat whoever the heck he beat to get to him. But at the same time, I'm not sure anyone could go hippy yak for Shadeur Stewart because the guy wanted to be paid an extra $500,000 to put the Bengals organization and the city of Cincinnati on hostage mode until he got paid. And he's out for his own personal benefit and not for the team. And we have the morons known as Bengals fans, delusional, diluted, ignorant, and cowardly, and gullible, fall for it. Here's a problem with all of this. I'm going to chop this down. I'm going to trace back to something I've said quite a few times before. For the last 3 to 4 years, you guys wanted Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and T. Higgins paid the top dollar at their respective positions. You got it. Now you guys are complaining about who the frick's guarding Shadeur Stewart on the practice squad, yapping like a bunch of cheap, useless hookers in the corner of Fifth and Vine who can't sell themselves because they can't find someone to pay them their worth or whatever the heck they want to call it. And you guys are whining about what happened on this day when I guess some offensive linemen just decided to fall face first on the practice field to let Shadeur Stewart go through. If you didn't want any of that to happen, why was you so pushy and demanding to have Chase, Burrow, and Higgins paid the top dollar when you could have had that dollars spent on bigger needs like an actual offensive line that can protect Joe Burrow from something like that happening in practice? That's where you guys, your delusionalism, your ignorance, and your cowardice shows day in and day out here in Cincinnati and amongst all of the social media platforms. You guys miss one thing when it comes to all of this. In lieu of getting your players played, you never push the narrative to take care of some of your biggest needs in the offseason because those needs were not even addressed. I mean, you guys thought Shadeur Stewart was going to be the reincarnation of what Trey Hendrickson was 5 years ago. That's not going to happen. You might as well forget that. You guys thought drafting these two linebackers, who I like, by the way, it's going to be something what Baltimore's had for the longest time. That ain't going to work. Don't even try it. You guys forget, because of all of this, you ran Jesse Bates out of town 3 years ago to sign a mid-tier left tackle in Orlando Brown Jr., And you guys thought signing Orlando Brown Jr. was a reincarnation of a prime Anthony Munoz. That's the idiocy and cowardice that goes on around here. And the way they reacted to what took place today at the practice field, and we're talking about practice, as Allen Iverson would say, not the game, not the game. We're talking about practice, as Allen Iverson would eloquently say. We're talking about practice. You guys are yapping about a play that took place in practice. Now, not an actual game, not a playoff game, not a Super Bowl, not a conference championship, not a Pro Bowl, not a Pop Warner championship, not a championship in the backyard with a bunch of birdhouses. You're complaining about a play in practice. You're complaining about a play in practice. Think about it. A play in practice. That's how you know how ignorant, cowardly, and gullible Bengals fans are. They're complaining about a play in practice. Look, nothing came out of it. Everything turned out okay, other than a bunch of people wanted to get into an argument who has a better-looking wife in the among the players. So everything in that part is going to be fine. Quit worrying about what the front office needs to do. Quit worrying about what the front office should do, because you guys, you Bengals fans, you Bengals super fans, and you Cincinnati media blew that for the last 4 years. That's done. That ship sailed. That's out of here. You guys blew it. Why? Because you'd rather have Chase, Higgins, or Burrow on your roster and not take care of all the other needs you have. And because you don't take care of other needs, we're stuck with this. Congratulations. You just made yourselves look like fools once again, all because of a practice play. But as again, another case of an after effect that goes on from what took place when the boot to ball was placed to start the 2023 season, when Joe Burrow's contract extension was announced, to this offseason when both the contract extensions of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins were announced, and you guys ignored everything else. And now everything is about to rear its ugly head. Right now, you just got to get ready for Washington Monday night. Because I remind you, I was at the Washington game when they came here week 3. And Jaden Daniels was put on a clinic like none other. And I told you guys to your face, that was going to happen. I know it's a preseason game, but I expect Jaden Daniels to have those moments where he does that again to you guys. And then what are you guys going to do? And not to mention what happened in the preseason game against Philadelphia, where basically some guy named Shipley just ran wild on you like he was chasing a hot chick, like the road Wile E. Coyote trying to chase the Roadrunner. That's the problem. The whole thing about complaining about the bad offensive line and the bad defense is dead. D-E-A-D, dead. Why? Because you blew it when you demanded Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins paid. That's where you blew it. I'm sorry I'm taking the hard approach. Actually, I'm not sorry, because I said I was going to tell you the truth and like it is. But had you taken care of your needs first, we won't be having these discussions. None of you guys in Cincinnati did, and now we're left with this. You better hope that Burrow, Chase, and Higgins are upright for the entire season, because as I said all along, nothing happens this year. Your stock will fall faster than Enron did. And the Bengals fans and those super fans like Zim and the captain, among many of those cowards over there, will sink faster than the Titanic. And I'll be sure the hell singing "My Heart Will Go On" as that happens, because it will be a thing of beauty. Glad I got that off my chest. And now, of course, the big news out of Buffalo, they signed James Cook after the hold-in, or whatever the hell you want to call it. 4 years, $48 million, $30 million guaranteed. The running back market can be real tricky. It can really be really tricky. I mean, it's there was a time when 4 down backs were the thing. I mean, I could point to a whole boatload of those: Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, LaDainian Tomlinson, Eric Dickerson. Maybe the gold standards right now in the NFL are Saquon Barkley of Philadelphia and Derrick Henry of Baltimore. The closest thing to throwback running backs as we have. Some other are very good ones. But when it comes to this, it's probably the best thing for both sides, because I think both they fit what the other needs. Buffalo gets the guy that fits for what they need, and James Cook's just the perfect fit for what Buffalo likes to do. Everybody's going to complain about the dollar at the running back position, but as I said, the running back market at times can be real tricky. Because remember, I think it was like 3-4 years ago, they had like a Zoom meeting with all the running backs to talk about their value. I can't remember the details of it. A boatload of running backs just got together. Of course, Saquon Barkley signed with Philadelphia last season. We know what that resulted in. Baltimore signed Derrick Henry, who had a renaissance to help Baltimore have one of the better records in the AFC. The running back market, we know the running back position probably has maybe the fastest peak, but also the fastest downturn when you consider the mileage that can add up to the running back body. And especially when you consider the physicality of the NFL, they're the ones that probably take, I don't want to say the most lumps, but among the most lumps in the NFL. So a lot of this contracts all over the place across the NFL landscape. I understand it at the running back position, because the running back position and the market for a running back can be real tricky. But I think for this case, James Cook gives Buffalo what they need, and Buffalo gives James Cook what he needs. It's probably a good match. The dollar figure is going to be debated for obvious reasons, but it was a good match both ways. And I think Buffalo and James Cook can hit a training camp relieved that is over with, and they can focus on the season. They're going to be one of the 2 to 3 top teams in the AFC at the very least, with Kansas City and Baltimore. Going to be a fun season up there. And I'll make my predictions about the division winners and the NFL stuff once the preseason ends. And on one quick note before I proceed, just, Godspeed to Rondale Moore, the wide receiver of Minnesota. Second straight year season ending injury. As I said, I've never been a fan of injuries in general, but the ones that hurt the most are the ones for preseason, especially for a guy like this who was trying to get back on the field only to have an injury at the end of to end his season again. Get well soon. Hopefully you can find your way onto an NFL field here soon. 2 straight years. It's brutal. You hate to hear it. You really hate to hear it. Get well soon, Rondale Moore. Now to the world of boxing. And this next one, I'm going to have the time of my life, because once again, the boxing community has shown their delusionalism and their ignorance once again. Apparently, there was a video that came out with Andre Ward, the one-time standout super middleweight and light heavyweight champion, said if he were to come back, the fight he would want is a fight against Anthony Joshua at a heavyweight. Question I have is why you guys are entertaining a guy who's been retired for, I think, 6-7 years now, against a heavyweight who's still a top 10 heavyweight. I mean, I know Joshua just got pulverized by the fake heavyweight champ Daniel Dubois, but he still has enough fight left in the tank to probably be a top 10 contender and put himself in a title mix again. Question I have is why do we have so many idiots ignorant enough to think Andre Ward being sidelined as long as he has, that has a chance against Anthony Joshua? Somebody needs to give me an honest explanation, because Andre Ward, I like the heck out of Andre Ward, at super middleweight and light heavyweight, very solid career, deservedly a first ballot Hall of Famer. All of a sudden, he's going to come out at heavyweight and just out of nowhere beat Anthony Joshua. What's the logic? What's the criteria? If you guys have the courage to tell me, I'll be sitting here waiting, because we have a lot of morons and idiots who are ignorant enough to think it's going to be basically an overfilled super middleweight when you consider what Andre Ward did in that Super 6 tournament, is all of a sudden going to fight a top 10 heavyweight and beat him. Again, what's the criteria? What's the logic? Someone have the courage to explain to me, because otherwise you're just a bona fide idiot if you legitimately think Andre Ward is just going to come out of retirement and just beat an Anthony Joshua. Yes, I know Joshua's probably a bit on his downturn. I get it. And, on Andre Ward, we talk about in the ring IQ, one of the better ones that has it. But he's in the ring with a guy who's a top 10 heavyweight. Now if he's fighting some, basically a Robert Helenius or someone like that, or one of the guys that Deontay Wilder padded his record against, that's one thing. And this is not, what we saw in 2003 when Roy Jones went to heavyweight to beat the fake heavyweight champ, John Ruiz. This is Andre Ward challenging a premier heavyweight still in Anthony Joshua. And there are people who are ignorant enough to think Andre Ward will beat Anthony Joshua or has a chance against Anthony Joshua at heavyweight. If you can fill the frame and have the skill set, have at it. But until then, everyone in the boxing community, please shut up about this fight, because it just has no sense, no logic, no integrity, and it shows you guys as the biggest bunch of hypocrites in the fight game, and real bad too. That's why I walked on a lot of you guys not too long ago. I didn't realize you guys could get any more stupid. It was bad enough you guys pushed for a Canelo Crawford fight. Now you guys are stupid enough to push for an Anthony Joshua Andre Ward fight. You better explain this one to me, because you just have no logic or no common sense in any walk of life if you want this fight that bad. Sheesh. Now we get to the historical aspect of it. We're going to start with what took place in Nigeria over 62 years ago. This was the rugged and tough and premier great Gene Fullmer facing the upstart middleweight champ from Nigeria, Dick Tiger, also known as Richard Yehu. This was the third of a trilogy where basically Dick Tiger just did, with the first fight, Dick Tiger did anything and everything he wanted to do to get to win the title from Fullmer. After Fullmer won the title from Carmen Basilio and made 7 successful title defenses, which included a win and a draw over Sugar Ray Robinson. And he basically almost a year removed from losing the title to Tiger at the Candlestick Park in San Francisco. The second fight wound up being a split draw, a fight that could have gone any other way. But the story of this one was basically the long, tough, great career of Gene Fullmer came to an end. One of the real rugged fighters who had a real unique style before a fighter who came forward had one of the better jabs of that era, and that's what made him a tough fighter for anyone to beat. I mean, the guy split with Sugar Ray Robinson, got a win and a draw against Sugar Ray Robinson when he was a defending middleweight champion. And of course, when he won the title from the real standout Carmen Basilio, who's also an all-time great middleweight nobody talks about enough. But in this particular fight, Dick Tiger just did anything and everything he wanted to do till Gene Fullmer just basically threw in the towel and quit the sport for good. Gene Fullmer, not talked about enough among the all-time greats in that middleweight division. Probably not going to make your top 10, maybe not your top 20, but had a very solid, good, respectable career. I mean, you talk about two-time middleweight champ, fought a lot of the best guys in that weight class, and we consider what took place here. Before that, he did beat Sugar Ray Robinson well before 6 years before to win his first incarnation of the middleweight title, till he lost it to him in 1957 when he was just obliterated in 5 rounds and the punch known as the left hook of perfection. Rebounded to beat the great Carmen Basilio, and basically reconfigured his style a little bit to beat Basilio, and then got the win and a draw over Robinson in a second reign as champion. Then, of course, the 3-fight series with Dick Tiger happened. And we talk about the career of Dick Tiger. One of the more unique fighters, maybe of that time. Three-time world champion in 2 weight classes. I talked about this 3-fight series with Fullmer. Lost his title to Joey Giardillo, but did manage to win the title back at Madison Square Garden in 65 to have a second reign as a world middleweight champ, only to lose it on his first title defense to the standout welterweight Emil Griffith. But his landmark came basically the equivalent of 3 months later after losing to Giardillo, when he fought the standout Jose Torres and basically shocked Jose Torres at Madison Square Garden to win the light heavyweight championship as a 3-1 underdog. Let me remind you, back in the 60s, a 3-1 underdog was a big thing. And for you, Mike Tyson fanboys out here, before Cus D'Amato brought us Mike Tyson and even Floyd Patterson, he had Jose Torres. And Torres, like Patterson and Tyson, implemented the same disciplines in the ring as those two did in their careers. And that was a big thing. That was basically the biggest upset for Dick Tiger, maybe the landmark moment of his career as a 3-1 underdog going into Madison Square Garden, which was a Puerto Rican audience, which is part of the Puerto Rican thing, that goes on in New York. He goes into the Lion's Den and beats Torres, being Dick Tiger, to win the undisputed light heavyweight championship, and made a successful title defense against him 2 fights later. Only have a wild ruckus take place after that fight. But of course, his end came about 2 years after that, when he ran into the buzzsaw named Bob Foster, the perfectly placed left hook that sent Dick Tiger down and out. Both Dick Tiger and Gene Fullmer are not going to make everyone's top 10 all-time list of anything. But they've had very respectable careers during their time, multiple times wearing the undisputed middleweight crown. Let me remind you, back then, it was the one belt era where you won the one belt, you was the undisputed champion. That's what I think it should be today. But that's what both Gene Fullmer and Dick Tiger had during their tenures as the middleweight champion. Solid wins both ways around. After we consider Gene Fullmer beat Sugar Ray Robinson twice in Robinson's historic career, and we know what the Sugar Ray Robinson distinction is. So a well-respected career for Gene Fullmer, and definitely with Dick Tiger. Actually, one publication had him one of the 50 most underrated fighters in the history of boxing. I can't remember what the publication was. I can't remember what his exact rating, but he cracked the top 50 among underrated. And he was a chiseled fighter built out of stone out of Nigeria. And a heck of a run for him, which basically ended with Bob Foster. A couple fights later with losing a rematch to Emil Griffith, where he retired. And at that point, he succumbed to liver cancer and passed away shortly after the Griffith loss. But certainly a standout fighter was Dick Tiger. And it was 62 years ago today, where in his home country of Nigeria, he ended the career of the great, tough, and durable Gene Fullmer at the end of their 3-fight trilogy, going 2-0-1 against Fullmer, the third fight ending Fullmer's career in the middle of Dick Tiger's run as the undisputed middleweight champ in his second incarnation as champion. Two real intriguing stories. We talk about Dick Tiger and Gene Fullmer. Must read, must look into. Two real good fighters. Again, we talk about underrated fighters of all time. Gene Fullmer and Dick Tiger fit that bill. Now we go to the more modern historical moment. And this was everything you expect boxing to be. I mean, this was everything you want out of boxing. You got it on this night. It was 30 years ago today at Atlantic City. It was Riddick Bowe against Buster Mathis Jr. I bring this one up because we have theatrics, which is what Riddick Bowe and Rock Newman were all about. And they fight Buster Mathis Jr., son of the one-time standout Buster Mathis Sr., who beat Joe Frazier in the amateurs, who went into this fight undefeated, having a minor belt, facing a Riddick Bowe whose career was still spiraling in circles after dropping the belt to Duck Lennox Lewis in that wild scene at the end of 1992 in London. And everything the career of Riddick Bowe was symbolized on this night, and the theatrics of him and Rock Newman and what they were all about. Basically, their biggest lockout was Buster Mathis couldn't crack a pillow with his fist. I mean, that was their biggest lockout of this particular night. But what happened in the end was Riddick Bowe had the fight under control, managed to put Buster Mathis down on one knee. But after his knee was down, a punch after he was down, and Buster Mathis initially was counted out, and officially it was declared a KO win for Riddick Bowe. But after numerous discussions among the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board, the fight was declared a no contest, and a fight where everyone was screaming disqualification, what it should have been. This was the epitome of what Riddick Bowe became when he beat Evander Holyfield to become the undisputed champ. Then he and his manager, Rock Newman, fly to London in front of Lennox Lewis's face and threw a belt in the garbage can to duck Lennox Lewis. And from that point on, the career of Riddick Bowe was just all over the place. And he no longer gave a darn. I mean, he came in this fight up close to 250, very lethargic. But his biggest lockout was Mathis couldn't punch a hole through a pillow if he wanted to try. And then we resort to the theatrics of Riddick Bowe was just his end game. Again, his biggest lockout was they called it a no contest when he should have been disqualified. And anything post Evander Holyfield version of Riddick Bowe was a guy who no longer cared, was a guy who basically was just fine with who he was after he won the title. He basically said he wanted to just live the way he wanted to. Even his trainer, Eddie Futch, saw this coming for the longest time. That's why he eventually left Riddick Bowe. But this was who he was at the end of the day. You're talking about going bat crazy. Riddick Bowe went back crazy after the whole fiasco with Lennox Lewis because that night in London, when he flew from Brooklyn, New York to London, England, just to throw a belt in the garbage can, just to symbolize what Riddick Bowe was at the end of the day. And basically, calling Lennox Lewis a garbage picker, where basically not only did he just threw the belt in the can to duck Lennox Lewis, he forever ducked Lennox Lewis when there was opportunity to pursue a fight with him. He never wanted it. They were in this for the dollars. They were in this for the theatrics. And the problem was Riddick Bowe's bad habits caught up with him. That's why he lost the rematch to Evander Holyfield. And in this fight, his bad habits showed its ugly head. Like I said, the biggest lockout for him in this fight was Buster Mathis couldn't crack a pillow if he tried. So it was a no contest win for no contest for Riddick Bowe and Buster Mathis. Originally declared a knockout for Bowe until discussions took place. But anyone who saw the fight and saw the footage knows Riddick Bowe escaped with one. He should have been disqualified after he hit Buster Mathis after he was down. But it was something he should not have done because he had control of the fight, had Mathis hurt, probably could have just found a way to control himself down and found a way to get a knockout had he not lost whatever he lost. So that's what happened at the end of the day. But, Riddick Bowe was a perfect case. I mentioned it with Hector Camacho last night of another fighter who had the goods to do something and be special because he was a bit of a trendsetter. I mean, a 6'5" heavyweight who wanted to get in there and mix it up. He wasn't a 6'5" guy with a reach and a jab and wanted to stay away from you. He wanted to seek you out. He wanted to mix it up. And he had the perfect punch against small fighters, the uppercut. And he showed what he was able to do in 92 when he beat Evander Holyfield. But that was his 5 minutes of fame. Basically, the bad habits just caught up, and he became one of the more sad stories when you consider what happened in the 2-fight series with Andrew Galata, which is every bit as crazy and bizarre as the Buster Mathis fight. That was Riddick Bowe in a nutshell. Love the guy, immensely talented. He and I share the same birthday. But when it comes to going to that next level, as I said before, to get to that next level, you need extra discipline, and Riddick Bowe didn't have it. That's where the end came for him. Oh, I love Riddick Bowe. And those 90s heavyweights were something, though. I'll give him that. And then I will conclude with a bit of almost like I don't want to call it tragedy, but a sad night that took place 43 years ago. One of the more iconic figures in Latino sports history. Not just Mexico, but you say all of the Latino community. Because I said this guy's a top 5 Latin American fighter of all time. Shout out Josh Isles. I see you out here. Hope you're doing good. This was the late Salvador Sanchez who lost his life. He was killed. I guess he hit a train as he was preparing for his rematch with Juan Laporte. We coined the phrase beautiful fighter, especially in the Latino community, because a lot of those Latino fighters were the perfect case of do-it-all fighters. I mean, I could point out to a whole boatload of them that basically came through. Of course, maybe the kingpin of them all still, Roberto Duran during his time at lightweight. Not far behind him was Alexis Arguello from Nicaragua. Also like Duran, a beautiful fighter, a sharpshooter, accurate. When he hit you, he did damage. Of course, some of the ones that came more recently, Chavez, Trinidad, Morales, Barrera, Cotto, just to name a boatload of them. But maybe the most complete of them all was none other than Salvador Sanchez. And this guy was a case of a fighter who was getting better and had a better resume at age 23 and ascended himself as one of the premier fighters pound for pound. It was about to be a serious challenger to the greatest featherweight of all time that included guys like Henry Armstrong and Willie Pep. And then we saw what happened with the unfortunate tragedy. And here's a wild part with Salvador Sanchez that everyone misses. This guy was actually looking at a multi-million-dollar paydays with standouts like Eusebio Pedroza, the aforementioned Alexis Arguello, even one with Hector Camacho, as he would probably venture up to super featherweight to fight those guys, because after the Laporte rematch, he would have wiped the ring with Laporte. God knows, he did it once already. He would have gone up and taken care of those guys, and we would have had an all-Mexican clash between Salvador Sanchez and Julio Cesar Chavez somewhere in the mid-'80s, because Mexico would have built that thing up through the roof. I mean, you thought Chavez Haugen would have seated 130,000 that night? I don't want to imagine what Chavez Sanchez would have sold out to had that fight happened at some point in the mid-'80s in the junior lightweight or lightweight divisions. because Sanchez would eventually had to move up because the competition was just flattened out after he just demolished the daylights out of Wilfredo Gomez. I mean, demolished effortlessly. I mean, you can pull up the footage of Sanchez Gomez. You want to talk about one-sided beatdown? He beat him down so bad, Wilfredo Gomez did the bend over backwards along the ropes. I don't know how his back held up after he got bent over like that. And, of course, the punch that pulverized Azuma Nelson in his last title defense before the unfortunate tragedy. And we may have had a Sanchez Nelson, too, because you know what became of Azuma Nelson as his career went on. And, maybe a Nelson-Sanchez rematch would have been in the cards. I mean, and think of what Nelson did to Sanchez the first time, only having 13 fights. When you talk about the premier fighters that in the Latino community, top 5, Salvador Sanchez is on it. I mean, I said the top 2 is always going to be Roberto Duran and Alexis Arguello. But mainly Duran's tenure at lightweight. Arguello wasn't that far behind him. Sanchez, probably just a pinch behind Arguello. Said Sanchez and Arguello would have probably collided at some point. It was actually discussed before the unfortunate tragedy happened. A beautiful do-it-all fighter in the featherweight and super featherweight divisions. A division that was known for, high volume punching, brutal wars, and, blood and guts, especially when we talk about the Latino community. But Salvador Sanchez brought much, much more to the table than just one of those blood and guts warriors. I mean, his ability to use a ring, his ability to counterpunch, his ability to have the tremendous ring IQ, and his ability to basically slip and put together the combinations, especially when he had you hurt, was second to none. As I said, Google his fight with Wilfredo Gomez. Those combinations had him doing the bend over backwards position. I don't know how the hell Gomez's back stayed upright after Sanchez beat him up that night and beat him up was being nice. And Wilfredo Gomez was a premier Puerto Rican fighter. Sanchez just made him look ordinary. But when you think about what could have been fighter in a different sense, and this guy wasn't even involved in stuff like alcohol and drugs like some of the other ones I mentioned, or a lack of discipline like I mentioned with Riddick Bowe not too long ago. This guy was the goods. He took his craft seriously, continued to work at his craft, was finding ways to be better. And while he was getting better, the resume was getting better. We talk about beating guys like Danny Lopez, Ruben Castillo, Juan Laporte, Wilfredo Gomez, and Azuma Nelson. And bigger names and bigger paydays were looking for a guy that was only 23 years old. And this guy was going to be in the upper echelon of surreal all-time greats because he was trending in that direction and trending fast. I mean, I've never called fighters, maybe Sugar Ray Leonard might be an exception, who trended that fast against better opposition at that age. Because Salvador Sanchez was a case of take all comers and show you how it's done. Even when he didn't look all that great when he fought Pat Cardell, but of course that was after the Wilfredo Gomez beatdown, which a letdown was expected given the nature of the fight with Wilfredo Gomez. I mean, it's a step down, understandably so. But still, Salvador Sanchez was still peaks and valleys in those classes over anyone he fought. I mean, it didn't matter who, didn't matter what, but that's what it was at the end of the day. And the world lost one of the premier figures in the Latino community. To show you how well respected this guy was, the day of his funeral, which was televised on ABC all over the place. Azuma Nelson and Juan Laporte, 2 opponents of his, flew from the respective countries of Ghana and Puerto Rico to Mexico to attend the Salvador Sanchez funeral and everything that took place with it. That should tell you the respect and the admiration, the high level gratitude Salvador Sanchez got during his time, and it really his short but tremendous career. Obviously, a first ballot Hall of Famer, that's a no-brainer. I mean, maybe he shares the distinction of the greatest Mexican fighter of all time with Chavez and maybe a couple of others, but he would have had this thing wrapped up had it not been for this, because he was headed toward that direction. I mean, the only guy before him was Ruben Olivares, but Olivares, although he was a very good fighter, didn't have nowhere near the resume Sanchez had, and Sanchez was going to about to have a better resume. When you talk about Pedroza, Camacho, Chavez, Arguello, just to name several of them of those higher weight classes, maybe a potential rematch with Azuma Nelson, because Nelson won 2 world titles after the loss of Sanchez. That could have been in the cards. I mean, this guy had a great past, but could have had a better future had it not been for the unfortunate circumstances. Now, it's always going to be a question of what happened with it. I don't know. That was in 1982. And I lived in America, not in Mexico. Maybe the Mexico or the Hispanic community could tell you this. But when you talk about, actually, let me give you a better synopsis. You guys see how Juan Manuel Marquez fight, and Marquez was a beautiful fighter himself. Sanchez was like Marquez times 50. I mean, as terrific as Juan Manuel Marquez was during his time, and he was terrific, we consider that his 4-fight series with Manny Pacquiao, among many others. That's nothing compared to just how great Salvador Sanchez was in the back end of the 70s as we crept into the 80s, especially when you talk about guys south of the lightweight division. I mean, he was creeping in the same names of the categories like Duran, Pett, Armstrong, Sadler. Even some of the guys that came after him, like a Pernell Whitaker, guys before him, like Benny Leonard, Joe Gantz. He was putting himself in that category and probably would have surpassed a lot of them had this not happened. This is how great Salvador Sanchez was. May God rest the soul of probably the premier Mexican talent in boxing history, and in Mexican boxing history, a top 5 Latino fighter, the great Salvador Sanchez. I encourage everyone to watch this guy's videos. He was a beauty to watch. Just tremendous. We coined the phrase do-it-all fighter with a lot of the guys today and the guys back then. Salvador Sanchez definitely was a do-it-all fighter. Fight anyway. Whatever you wanted to try to do, you couldn't get it done. Why? Because Salvador Sanchez was head and shoulders above everyone else for that time, especially in those weight classes. I mean, what he did to Wilfredo Gomez, just turn his face inside out and have him in the bend over backwards position. That should tell you everything you need to know. And Gomez was 37-0 with 37 knockouts, was pegged as a favorite because he was wiping everybody out. Salvador Sanchez had other ideas. In the middle of that wild Mexican-Puerto Rican rivalry that time, they had dueling salsa bands, among many other things. What an event that was, and what a way to rise to the occasion for the late, great Salvador Sanchez. May God rest his soul. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sir Hunt on X. I will be back at it tomorrow night. Also, for those of you on the X platform, tomorrow night, I will be on the spaces of NFL Gridiron with James McMahon and a bunch of great people over there to discuss more NFL talk. And as always, if you miss any part of this show or ones of the past that I've done, you're always welcome to listen to them on the Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify apps. The audio versions will be uploaded to those platforms. And as always, as I tell everyone at this time of year, always take care of yourself first. If you take care of yourself first, all the good things will come your way. And if you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else in life matters. Stay true to yourself. Don't let anyone treat you as an option because they'll always think of you as an option. That's how life is. I had to learn that the hard way. But until then, have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless. Enjoy the evening. And I'll be talking to you tomorrow night.